Welcome back. Tuesday, March 13th, 2018. Big news day in the world because it's a big news day in America, and it's a big news day combining America and the world with the news that Mike Pompeo, former director of Central Intelligence Agency, has now been designated and nominated to become the next U.S. Secretary of State with the departure of Rex Tillerson. Wanted to get the take. I saw some tweets about this early this morning that I really liked. Wanted to get the take of one of my favorite people, not only in Phoenix, but in the whole United States, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Dr. Jasser, this is what we call a trade up, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. As you know, one of the only complaints I had about the cabinet from the beginning was Rex, and I am a bit elated about Rexit, right? The exit of Mr. Tillerson. I think Mr. Pompeo, Director Pompeo, now Secretary Pompeo, I think will be fantastic. And Adam Credo, I think, is reporting as a free beacon that it might have more to, now the media spinning that has to do about North Korea and getting...
Nah, it looks like it's an Iran thing, doesn't it?
Exactly. It looks like, and that's not a surprise because Tillerson, our problem with him from the beginning was his two portfolios before coming to government in Exxon were Qatar and Russia. And who else do you want to cause problems with taking apart the Iran deal than somebody who was given an award by Putin and then ultimately had a Qatar portfolio? And you saw the Trump administration moving towards the Saudis, which was much smarter because the Saudis now have marginalized the Brotherhood and they're trying to contain Qatar. And that blockade has been putting a lot of pressure. So I think behind the scenes we haven't heard about probably the conflict not only with Iran but with Qatar, and I think that was probably what ended up. And Tillerson didn't leave. He was a good company man. He was basically fired. And I think it's good to see Pompeo in, who has a much bigger vision globally about the role of America. And I think will not sheepishly, I think he'll work wonderfully with Ambassador Haley. I think that'll be a wonderful combination. Nikki Haley has not been shy at all to call out everyone from Russia to Qatar to Iran and on. She's been quite clear, and I think that'll, and her tweet this morning congratulating Pompeo and saying that this is a great choice, I think showed that she's not embarrassed to say that this looks like a trade up, as you say.
There was an old joke that was around in the early 80s. Remember, U.S. Senator from North Carolina, Jesse Helms, was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and it was always very hard to convince to spend money on the State Department. And he said once upon a time, I'm not against the State Department, I just want it to open an American desk. And it feels very much like we'll get something like that with Mike Pompeo, not only someone who sees America for what its role in the world should be, and with the Trump vision. But more importantly, I think for the purposes you and I and Chris and a lot of us have cared about for so long, is someone who can actually see Iran for what it is. There has been way too much, even up until yesterday, appeasement of this, the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism.
Exactly. And to see that appeasement doesn't work with the Arab mind or the Middle Eastern thugs and bullies, that they only understand, as Reagan used to say, peace through strength. And I think Pompeo is much more of a Reaganite than Tillerson ever was. But I do want to mention one thing. I think for all of my criticism of Secretary Tillerson, I think his legacy will be, he was criticized a lot for shrinking the State Department. And like you just said about the American desk, I think he said, hold on a sec, this was a bloated State Department that was all about lifers that ended up becoming nativists, as we'd call them when I was on the U.S. Commission, folks that were really more getting what's called clientitis in the states they were in rather than looking at America's interests. And I think Tillerson did shrink the State Department a deserved amount considerably, which might have decreased their influence, but an influence that was being squandered at the appeasement of other governments that were our enemies. And I think now we'll see Pompeo move forward in a more confrontational approach towards Iran, which will actually, while they might protest more, it'll end up containing them.
Well, that's fine, and that's well, and that's good. I agree with you. Let them protest. They protest anyway. quite frankly. We give them money, they capture soldiers. We give them money, they capture civilians. We give them money, they kill our soldiers. I don't know what we have gotten for the appeasement. I think what we have gotten for the appeasement is not only a higher American body count, but, as no one needs to tell you, a higher civilian Syrian death count as well.
And the timing, Seth, could not be better. I was getting so worried because I just listened to a Hoover Institute expert on Iran, and he said never in his life has been studying Iran. He's from Iran, left right after the 79 revolution, Abbas Amani, and he said, never in his life has it been more unstable. The revolution is running on the banks. Many of the banks in Iran have shut down. The Chinese have reached out to bail out the banks, which would make Iran a colony of China, as did Russia, and they're on the verge of doing that. And if that happens, that would destabilize our influence significantly in the Middle East and make Qatar look like a fly compared to what China and Russia could do if they controlled the Iranian economy. So I think we finally now will have a Secretary of State who looks towards really emphasizing our siding with the revolution and the fact that the best anti-nuclear deal is not only dismantling the one that Obama put together, but actually helping the revolution move forward. Absolutely
having an assist to the organic movement within Iran, so that they can not dismantle the nuclear deal, but dismantle the regime.
Exactly, and
it's that's what the problem is. It's not the deal. So the deal is problematic, but the problem is the regime.
Absolutely, and they're wreaking havoc through the region. Israel, I think, is going to sleep better now. They've been trying to figure out what to do with missiles around them, and those have all been put in place by the Iranians, and there would be no conflict while Israel could ultimately win that war. The last thing they want is to end up going to war against Iran. And now, especially with Syria being a client state of Iran and Iraq having been lost now to Iran. So the fall of Iran would be a huge win for American interests in the region, and then ultimately may end up spelling the end of Assad and bringing Iraq back to our fold. So,
that would be a great new foreign policy or international relations dialectic if we could watch it work that way. It does give you, with this move, a sense of better well-being on the world stage at this point. It does give you that sense. There was this little noted news item today. I think it's actually something that deserves more attention for those that have been critics of the Trump administration for not pushing Israel harder to negotiate with the Palestinians. Here's the headline: Palestinian Prime Minister survives assassination attempt in Gaza. Let me just flesh that out. The Prime Minister of the West Bank Palestinian movement survives an assassination attempt from the Gaza Palestinian territory from the Palestinian movement in Gaza. My point is this: once the Palestinians can work with one another as between the West Bank and Gaza, then maybe we can start talking to the Israelis about getting along with the Palestinians. I think they have a little work to do themselves first.
And this is the other side. I'm so glad you brought up Israel and Gaza and the West Bank. And, we are finally going to start to maybe get some clarity about a Trump doctrine, because I was getting very concerned with an Arabist like Tillerson in place as Secretary of State, and then Jared Kushner's peace plan. Daniel Pipes had some good writing a few weeks ago saying, listen, I hope that the Jerusalem embassy, as much as it's a wonderful thing to finally see a president mean what he says by building our embassy in Jerusalem and declaring that a capital, it better not be a salvo that was sort of under the table, said this will be a agreement to then recognize a Palestinian state, because the Palestinians need to accept universal human rights and be a legitimate state before we start handing them recognition.
Right. It's increasingly looking like that was not a under-the-table quid pro quo.
I hope not.
Yeah.
And, I think Pompeo has been a much more stalwart defender of Israel. And I think there is no better telltale, Seth, than today the Council on American Islamic Relations released a press release saying President Trump has now identified an Islamophobe and a bigot against Muslims as the Secretary of State.
There you go. Okay.
The Muslim Brotherhood in America has declared him a a Islamophobe, which means he must be a good guy.
Yeah, we're in. Sign me up. Dr.
Exactly.
Zuhdi Jasser from the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. You still want to find book, you still want to read his book, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. Dr. J, thank you for everything.
Anytime.
We'll talk to you soon, brother. 602